We live in a world obsessed with productivity. We set goals, we write to-do lists, we build vision boards, we chase promotions, numbers, followers, abs, dollars, constantly asking what we want and how to get there. But the question we don't ask often enough is why? Why do we want it? Why does it matter? Why is this worth our time, our energy, our life? It's easy to get caught in the momentum of ambition. And there's nothing wrong with ambition. The problem is when it becomes directionless. When we set goals just because other people are setting them. When we follow a path just because it looks impressive. That's when we wake up one day having climbed the ladder of success, only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. And we're going to talk about setting goals step by step. The very first step, the one we can't skip, is starting with why. Not a slogan, not a marketing gimmick. I'm talking about something deeply human. The reason that wakes you up, keeps you up, and pulls you forward when nothing else will. You see, why gives your goals a heartbeat. It turns them from tasks into causes, from chores into missions. Anyone can write down, run a marathon, or start a business, or lose 20 pounds. But the people who actually follow through, who stay when it gets hard, aren't just disciplined. They're driven by something deeper. They have a reason that matters. That reason doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be real. Maybe your goal is to get fit. That's the what. But the why might be, I want to be the kind of parent who can keep up with my kids. Or I'm tired of feeling invisible when I walk into a room. Or I want to finally prove to myself that I am not the person my past says I am. That's the fire. That's the fuel. That's the thing that keeps you lacing up your shoes when motivation disappears. Because motivation does disappear. That's just a fact. There will be days when you don't feel like doing the work. Days when results are invisible. Days when no one is clapping. And on those days, your why is the only thing that will keep you in the game. Without it, goals become fragile. They break under pressure. We quit after the third setback. We give up when the timeline doesn't match our expectation, and we tell ourselves the lie, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But what if the truth isn't that you're not cut out for it? What if the truth is you just haven't rooted your goal in something real? The most powerful goals don't start in your mind, they start in your heart. They come from pain, from love, from a desire to serve, from a longing to heal. They come from moments when you were overlooked, underestimated, or told to stay in your lane. They come from moments of clarity, when something inside you said, I can't live like this anymore. That's where your goals need to begin. And when you find that deeper reason, everything else changes. Suddenly, it's not just about finishing a course. It's about becoming a person who believes in their potential. It's not just about saving money. It's about creating a life of freedom, a life where your kids don't have to grow up with the same stress you did. It's not just about launching a brand. It's about building something that matters, something that reflects who you really are. That's what makes the difference. The people who change their lives, change their habits, change the world, they all begin the same way. Not with a plan, not with a strategy, with a reason, a clear, compelling why that's bigger than fear, bigger than excuses, bigger than the obstacles in front of them. Now, don't get me wrong, clarifying your why isn't always easy. It's not a checkbox. It's a process of asking yourself the hard questions. What am I chasing? And more importantly, what am I running from? What do I want people to feel when they're around me? What do I want to be remembered for? What would break my heart if I never at least try? Sit with those questions, journal them, talk about them, be brutally honest. Because once you find your why, everything else starts to align. Your priorities shift, your energy sharpens, and you begin to see your goals not as obligations, but as expressions of who you are. You stop copying other people's timelines because you're not here to live someone else's life, you're here to live yours, authentically, boldly, fully. That only happens when your goals come from within. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need a detailed map. You just need to know why the journey matters to you. If that's clear, you'll find the rest, the steps, the habits, the path. They'll come. But the foundation must be strong. And the foundation is purpose. So before you write your goals, pause. Ask yourself, what do I believe in? What matters so much to me that I'd be willing to fail for it, to start over for it, to get uncomfortable for it? That's your compass. That's your anchor. That's your why. Because at the end of the day, setting a goal isn't about reaching a destination. It's about becoming someone worth following. And people don't follow what you do. They follow why you do it. Start there. Start with why. And everything else, every step, every milestone will finally have meaning. Not just momentum, but meaning. And that's how goals turn into legacies. Those people are pushing themselves to work harder, pushing to stay motivated, pushing to keep going when things feel heavy. But the ones who truly create change, lasting change, aren't just pushing. They're being pulled. Pulled by a vision so compelling that it feels almost magnetic. And that's the difference. It's not about how hard you can grind. It's about what's driving the grind in the first place. If your only motivation is to avoid failure or to catch up to someone else, you'll burn out, you'll lose steam. But when you have a vision, something vivid, personal, meaningful, you don't just wake up to chase a goal, you wake up because something is calling you forward. We often confuse goals with vision. Goals are specific, measurable, concrete. They're the milestones. But vision is the why behind the goals. It's the emotional picture of the life you want to build. It's not a checklist. It's a feeling. It's a future you can feel in your bones before it even exists. It's what makes the work worth it. Think about this. Anyone can set a goal like make more money, but money by itself isn't compelling. It's the vision attached to it that matters. Maybe the vision is, I want to create a life where I'm not trapped by bills. Or I want to take care of my parents the way they took care of me. Or I want to be free to say yes to experiences without fear. That's not a transaction. That's transformation. And transformation moves people. Your vision should feel alive. It should feel so real that you can almost touch it. Not because it exists yet, but because it lives inside you. Close your eyes and picture it. Who are you in that vision? What do you look like? How do you feel when you walk into a room? Who's around you? What are you building, creating, contributing? These questions aren't fluffy. They're foundational. Because if you don't know where you're headed, how can you expect to get there? And here's the truth. Without a clear vision, you'll settle. You'll settle for whatever's easiest. You'll take whatever path is closest. You'll say yes to things that don't align because you have no filter, no focus, no reason to say no. But when your vision is clear, decision-making gets simple, maybe not easy, but simple. You start saying no to distractions, to quick dopamine, to shiny shortcuts, because you know they're not part of the picture you're building. And your vision is strong, it changes how you show up. You stop needing external validation. You stop measuring your worth by likes or followers or applause. Because your sense of direction isn't based on approval. It's based on alignment. You're not waiting to be picked. You've already picked yourself. The beautiful part, you don't need to know every detail of how it's going to happen. You just need to be emotionally connected to why it needs to happen. That's what creates the pull. That's what keeps you going when the steps get messy or the map changes. When life throws its curveballs and the plan needs a rewrite, your vision stays, it adapts, but it doesn't disappear. You see, Clarity of vision creates resilience. When you know what you're moving toward, setbacks aren't the end. They're just detours. Temporary, inconvenient, but not defining. Because you're anchored in something bigger than today's frustration. You can take the hit and still keep going. Because you're not pushing through life aimlessly. You're being pulled by something that matters. And this is why visualization isn't just a motivational trick. It's a strategic advantage. Great leaders do this. Great athletes do this. They don't just practice. They see, they feel, they imagine, they step into the future mentally long before they arrive physically. Because once your brain has tasted the outcome, it starts finding ways to make it real. Your choices begin to shift. Your habits begin to align. Not because you're forcing it, but because your internal compass is locked onto something that inspires you. But here's the thing. Your vision doesn't have to look like anyone else's. In fact, it shouldn't. Your vision is yours. It's shaped by your story, your scars, your values. Maybe your vision is building a global movement. Maybe it's raising kind, confident children. Maybe it's living quietly and peacefully, free from chaos. There's no right answer, but there is a real one. And the more honest you are with yourself, the stronger the pull becomes. If you can't feel the pull yet, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're lost. It just means you haven't tuned in deep enough. Take the time. Create space. Turn down the volume of the outside world so you can hear the whisper inside. The one that says, this is who I really want to be. That voice is always there. It just gets drowned out by noise and doubt and pressure to perform. The moment you stop chasing random goals and start chasing a meaningful vision, something clicks. You become dangerous in the best way. Focused, calm, and unshakable. Because you're no longer reacting to life, you're designing it. You're no longer running from the past, you're running toward the future. And that future, it's not a fantasy. It's a decision. One that begins when you say, this is what I'm building. This is who I'm becoming. And nothing less will do. So yes, set your goals, but don't start there. Start with vision. Create a picture so real, so emotional, so deeply connected to your values that it refuses to let you settle. Let it pull you forward. Because when you're pulled, you don't need to force discipline. You don't need to beg for motivation. You don't need to wait for inspiration. You just move, you act, you build. Not because you have to, but because you're becoming someone who can't not. It's easy to get excited about a goal. We all do it. We see the end result. We feel a rush of possibility, and we tell ourselves, this time I'm going to do it. We write the goal down, maybe even circle it, highlight it, post it on our mirror. But a few weeks pass, and the excitement fades. Life gets loud again. The goal becomes just another thing on a long list of unfinished promises to ourselves. And then we feel shame. We think something's wrong with us. We assume we lack discipline, willpower, maybe even talent. But that's rarely the real problem. The real issue isn't the goal, it's the system behind it. Or more accurately, the lack of one. We live in a world that glorifies the big win, the transformation, the launch, the success story. But real progress doesn't happen in giant leaps. It happens in small, repeatable actions, systems, habits, routines. These aren't the sexy parts of the journey, but they're the parts that matter most. Because the truth is, goals set direction, but systems create results. Think about that. A goal is just a destination. It tells you where you want to go, but a system is the vehicle. It's how you actually move forward 1 mile at a time, even when the weather's bad, the road gets bumpy, and you don't feel like driving. You can't reach the destination if you don't take the wheel consistently. And yet, most people put all their energy into defining the goal and almost none into designing the system. That's like deciding to run a marathon, buying the best running shoes, posting about it online, and then never building a training plan. Eventually, willpower runs out. But systems don't care how motivated you feel, they just keep you moving. This is why people who achieve lasting change think differently. They don't just ask, what do I want? They ask, what kind of person do I need to become in order to make this sustainable? They don't chase outcomes. They commit to identity-based action. They build systems around the version of themselves they're growing into. For example, someone with a goal to write a book might say, I'll write 500 words a day at 6 a.m. no matter what. That's not a wish, that's a system. Someone with a goal to get healthy might say, I'll cook dinner 5 nights a week and do 30 minutes of movement daily. That's not motivation talking, that's structure. And structure builds trust in yourself. You start to realize that success isn't about dramatic change. It's about consistency, doing the small things even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching, because that's where self-respect grows. That's where momentum builds. And let's be clear, systems don't have to be perfect, they just have to be repeatable. Most people wait for ideal conditions. I'll start when I have more time. I'll begin once I feel ready. But readiness is a myth. You'll never feel fully prepared. Start anyway. Start messy. The system can evolve. But you need a starting point. Something simple enough to do daily, meaningful enough to matter, and clear enough to track. Simplicity is key. Complexity kills momentum. If your system requires too many decisions, too much willpower, or too much perfection, you won't stick with it. The best systems are almost boring. They feel mundane, even mechanical. But that's the point. When your process becomes automatic, your progress becomes inevitable. The people we admire most, the ones who seem effortlessly disciplined, aren't relying on motivation. They've just removed friction. They've built the life that supports their goals instead of one that constantly sabotages them. That's intentional. That's design. Ask yourself, what systems support the life I say I want? And just as importantly, what systems are silently working against me? Your environment is a system, your schedule is a system, your habits, your inputs, your relationships. These are all parts of the ecosystem that either feed your growth or drain it. If your environment contradicts your goal, your environment will win. This is why clarity matters so much. You need to know not only what the goal is, but also what kind of inputs are required. What daily actions move the needle? What habits compound over time? What can be repeated without drama or decision fatigue? And remember, discipline isn't about force. It's about alignment. You don't need to wake up every day and argue with yourself about what to do. That's exhausting. You need a system that makes the next step obvious, that takes the guesswork out of progress. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be consistent. There's a big difference. Perfection says, if I can't do it all, I won't do it at all. Consistency says, even a small step is still a step forward. One builds shame, the other builds confidence. So if you've struggled with staying on track, stop blaming your character. Start looking at your system. Is it sustainable? Is it simple? Is it rooted in the version of you you're becoming, not the version of you you're trying to escape? Because when your systems reflect your future self, change becomes natural. It becomes less about pressure and more about process, less about performing and more about progressing. Less about wishing and more about working the plan. That's how you make your goals real. You don't wait for the perfect day. You don't chase after motivation. You build a system that works. And then you work that system again and again until your results are no longer a surprise, the reflection of who you are. So set your goals, yes. Dream big. But then zoom in. Ask yourself, what does today look like for someone who achieves this? What can I automate, ritualize, or simplify? Because the truth is, greatness is never just one big leap. It's 1,000 small steps in the right direction, repeated with intention. Don't just think in steps, think in systems. Because systems are what turn intentions into outcomes and goals into legacies. Most people chase results. They want the transformation, the trophy, the proof. And there's nothing wrong with wanting progress. But the real question, the deeper question, is this: who are you becoming in the process? See, it's easy to fall into the trap of goal setting that's purely outcome driven. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to earn 6 figures. I want to write a book. These are all fine goals. But if you don't link them to who you are, they become shallow, hollow, easily abandoned. Because goals that aren't anchored in identity become optional the moment life gets hard. And life will get hard. The real shift, the one that sticks, is when your goal is no longer just something you do, it's a reflection of who you are. When the process is no longer just about hitting numbers, but about showing up as someone you believe in. That's where transformation begins. Not when you cross the finish line, but when the actions align with your core. Because the moment you attach your progress to identity, everything changes. You're not just trying to run, you're becoming a runner. You're not just trying to lead, you're becoming a leader. You're not just trying to write, you're becoming a writer. This distinction matters deeply. Because identity creates consistency, and consistency creates results. When you think of your actions as proof of who you are, every decision starts reinforcing your story instead of rewriting it. This isn't theory, this is biology. Our brains are constantly looking for evidence of who we believe we are, and when our actions contradict our identity, there's a crack, a tension that creates discomfort. But that discomfort can be your compass. You get to decide, either change the action or rewrite the identity. And most people do the first. They change the action to match the old identity. I guess I'm just not disciplined. I've never been good with money. I'm not a morning person. That's not fact. That's a story you've told yourself. A story you've rehearsed. A story you've memorized so well that it's become your script. But you can change the script. You can start showing up as someone new, not because you've arrived, but because you've decided to identify with growth instead of limitation. And here's what most people miss. Identity isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice. You don't become confident and then start speaking up. You start speaking up, and over time your brain starts to believe, I'm someone who speaks up. You don't wait until you're fit to go to the gym. You go to the gym as someone who's choosing to be fit. And that choice, repeated, becomes belief. That belief, repeated, becomes identity. And identity is what changes everything. Because once a behavior aligns with who you are, it becomes hard to abandon. It's no longer what you do, it's part of your standard. And we never rise above our standards for long. If something doesn't feel like you, you'll eventually sabotage it, avoid it, or delay it. But if it does feel like you, you'll defend it, nurture it, protect it, even when it's hard. So the real work of setting goals isn't just about defining what you want. It's defining who you are when you're at your best. It's asking, what kind of person would naturally produce this result? Then it's choosing to act like that person now. Not someday, but today. Every time you follow through, even in a small way, you cast a vote for that identity. Every time you don't hit snooze, every time you honor your calendar, every time you make the hard choice, you're sending a signal, this is who I am now. And those votes stack up. They create a new sense of self. Not because you faked it, but because you practiced it. That's the beautiful part. Identity isn't about perfection. It's about evidence. You don't need 100% alignment to believe something new about yourself. You just need enough wins to tip the scale, enough proof to overwrite the old narrative. It's the opposite of imposter syndrome. Most people walk around with reverse imposter syndrome, holding on to outdated beliefs that no longer match their growth. They've evolved, but their self-position hasn't caught up yet. And that gap, that's what keeps them stuck. So take a moment, ask yourself, what's the story I've been telling about who I am? Is it empowering? Is it true? Is it helping me grow or keeping me safe? Because your story is powerful, but it's not permanent. You get to revise it. You get to say, I am someone who follows through. I am someone who honors my word. I am someone who does hard things when it matters. And the more you repeat that belief through action, not just affirmation, the more it becomes real, not because you wished it into existence, but because you earned it one choice at a time. That's why identity-driven progress is different. It's rooted, it's resilient. It doesn't fall apart at the first sign of failure because it wasn't built on results, it was built on integrity. Even when you stumble, you know how to get back up because you know who you are. You're not someone who's trying, you're someone who is. That's the key to lasting change. Not intensity, not hype, not pressure, identity. When you anchor progress to who you are becoming, when every small win becomes a vote for that identity, you don't just achieve your goals, you embody them. And that is the kind of progress that no one can take away. Most people think success is linear. Set a goal, make a plan, follow the plan, and arrive. That's the story we're told. That's the expectation we create. And it's why so many people quit when things get messy, because they weren't told that the mess is part of the process. Because progress isn't about doing everything right the first time. It's about noticing what's working, what's not, and making thoughtful adjustments along the way. The people who grow the most aren't the ones who have the best start. They're the ones who pause often enough to ask better questions. They review, they reflect, and they adjust. It's a habit, a mindset, a commitment to awareness over ego. Because when you're constantly adjusting, failure doesn't become a dead end. It becomes feedback, information, a breadcrumb. And those who are brave enough to listen to the feedback instead of being offended by it are the ones who find their way forward. We're so used to thinking of success as execution that we forget the most powerful part is evaluation. Think about it. How often do we stop to review what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why it matters? Most people don't. They stay busy. They stay on autopilot, and they confuse movement with progress. But movement without direction is just motion. Progress requires intention, and intention comes from reflection. There's a quiet kind of courage in slowing down, in asking yourself, what did I learn this week? What felt aligned? What felt forced? What needs to shift? These aren't dramatic questions, but they produce dramatic clarity. And clarity changes everything. Because without reflection, we become reactive. We drift. We get swept up in noise, we chase the wrong metrics, we forget why we started, and one day we look up and wonder how we ended up so far off course. You can't course correct if you never stop to check the map. Reviewing doesn't mean criticizing yourself. It means honoring your process, looking at it with curiosity instead of judgment, asking not, what's wrong with me, but what can I learn from this? That subtle shift, compassion over condemnation, creates space for real change. And reflection isn't just for when things go wrong. It's just as important when things go right. Because when you reflect on what's working, you double down on your strengths. You recognize patterns. You create repeatable wins. You stop stumbling into success and start designing it. That's what the best performers do. They don't leave progress to chance. They take inventory constantly, not obsessively, but intentionally. They track, they journal, they debrief, not because they love spreadsheets or systems, but because they understand this simple truth. What you measure, you improve. What you track, you take seriously. You don't have to review your entire life every week. You just have to create moments of intentional pause, mini check-ins, quick conversations with yourself. How am I showing up? Is this aligned with who I want to be? Is my current approach creating the results I care about? People get so attached to their plans that they forget the plan was just a guess. That's all it ever was, a hypothesis, a starting point. The goal isn't to defend the plan. The goal is to learn from it, to evolve it, to make it better with every step you take. Think of it like sailing. You don't just point the boat toward the horizon and go. You constantly adjust your sails. You check the wind. You check your position. And even if you get blown off course, you don't freak out. You recenter, you reroute, you keep going, not in a straight line, but forward nonetheless. That's how goals are achieved, through constant refinement, through micro-adjustments, through humility. You don't need to be stubborn. You need to be awake, aware, willing to trade ego for insight. And when you do, you start to fall in love with the process, not just the outcome. You realize that every setback taught you something. Every detour showed you something. Every mistake gave you something. And when you see your journey through that lens, you stop rushing it. You stop resenting it. You start respecting it. Because it's not about how fast you get there. It's about how deeply you understand yourself along the way. That's what review does. That's what reflection gives you. Not just data, but wisdom. Not just answers, but better questions. Not just speed, but direction. And direction, more than anything else, is what creates fulfillment. So pause often. Look back, not to dwell, but to gather. Look ahead, not to stress, but to orient. And look within, not to judge, but to remember who you are and what you're building. Because if you keep checking in, you won't drift too far. You'll stay connected, you'll keep evolving, and eventually you'll realize that you didn't just reach your goal, you became the kind of person who naturally lives it. And that, in the end, is the real reward.